can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering Paranormal.
He meddled in things that you people were. He meddled in
Slug.
things. He meddled in things.
Where will we go next? This phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hello, I'm Alex Daikaiju,
I'm Jasmine with
I'm Eli Watson.
and we are
Cryptid.
Campfire.
woohoo!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 3 of the Nessie trilogy.
Our final night redeeming Nessie from the first episode we ever did, where we only talked about her for 15 minutes. It's our final night. We've spent 2 nights here already. We're about to finish it off. However, there's no guarantee about what we'll talk about in this episode. Nessie and the Loch Ness Monster, that's one of those cryptids that people spend their entire lives researching. So there is an endless amount of information and why could I not remember the word sightings, expeditions? There's literally so much to talk about. We're going to try and hit some of the most important ones now. But I mean, we're obviously not going to be able to talk about everything, but we'll see what we can cover. And hopefully this episode won't be 3 or 4 hours long. We're going to have to stop ourselves at some point because this is not going to become a 4-parter.
Yeah, no way. There's a lot of meat on those Nessie bones. I had a quick question. I just want to ask you guys, since we were there at the very first episode of Cryptid Campfire. We're here now, kind of recovering from the mistakes of the past. Is this the first ever 3-parter we've done?
I mean, I think on a single topic, maybe. I mean, we did a whole tome on Bigfoot. So
Bigfoot or Mothman. We did the Mothman part 1, part 2, and then we did the Mothman prophecies as kind of the 3rd part. But
that wasn't like a real research episode. That was like a review and talk about the movie.
Yeah,
a little bit of a prototype.
I don't know. I would have to go through our library, but I think it might be the first standalone 3-parter.
Yeah,
I think so.
Pretty exciting. Just wanted to see what you guys thought. It's exciting. It's been 3 nights at Scotland. We've been eating a lot of haggis, and I think we're ready to take it away with Nessie 3, The Revenge.
I do want to preface with so the first episode's all kind of about the folklore, the prehistory of the Loch Ness Monster. The second episode focuses on a flap year, as it's known, but just a whole bunch of sightings and stuff, 1933 through 1934. And that's kind of like the big year for Nessie is 1933 through 34. After that, I don't think there's been anything that's come even close to not the amount of sightings, but the nature of the sightings. How I guess big those sightings are, like seeing a Nessie cross the road, or the surgeon's photograph debacle. There's nothing really comes close to that. And so the 3rd episode, this episode, is kind of being shaped by some of the people involved. And so that's kind of how we're going to introduce this, because people show up and then keep showing up throughout.
There's a good handful of people whose names pop up in a lot of the articles you'll read, a lot of the documentaries you watch, books you read. And we're going to hopefully be able to introduce some of those people to you if you either haven't heard of them before, or maybe only know their names and want to know a little bit more about what they do and how they've had an impact on the Nessie narrative.
Or maybe you know them and you're just finding out that they are somehow connected to Nessie.
Or maybe you are one of them and you're listening to Cryptid Campfire and you feel very, very honored for us to be talking about you.
Hey everyone, I want to thank you all for watching Cryptid Campfire, and I ask that if you are enjoying the show, please subscribe to the channel right now. Like this video, click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show.
Yeah. Don't sue us. And away.
So, character number one is a fellow named Tim Dinsdale.
Mhm.
Saturday, April 23rd, 1960. Okay, you know what? Backtrack. Tim Dinsdale. What are some fun facts about him? Who is this guy? Who is this character who's going to continue showing up? Well, he was born in Wales in 1924. His father was a shipping agent in China, and that's where he grew up, was in China. And he went to a special missionary school that was 500 miles away from his home. And so in order to go to school every day, he would have to take a ship along with 70 other American and British children. Then in 1935, when he was 10 years old or 11 years old, the ship was seized by pirates, and then he was eventually rescued by a British aircraft carrier. Later, Dinsdale wrote an account about his time on the ship as it was taken over by pirates, and he won second place in a competition run by a local newspaper. Now, my question is, who won first?
Yeah. Damn. I mean, like, if your own personal story of being shanghaied, only nets you number two. And what was number one? I ran for president and didn't quite do it. I became the vice president and the Secret Service too.
Yeah. All of that is true, by the way. That all happened to Tim.
I'll be honest, I didn't really look into his personal life very much. I tried to stay focused on Nessie related information, but that is a wonderful story.
Yeah, well, it came up. I didn't intend to do all that research on him, but it came
Sure.
up because I think he has like an autobiography about himself looking for Nessie. And it's like, oh, the truth about myself or something. And then the description of the book was wild. And it was like from getting kidnapped by pirates at the age of 10 to doing 57 expeditions in 27 years looking for the Loch Ness Monster. I'm like, who is this dude?
Gotcha.
Why is he doing all this?
Yeah, dang.
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned there, he went on 57 expeditions in 27 years looking for the Loch Ness Monster. But this is the story of the first and the most pivotal. I don't know, those are my words. Go ahead and roast me for that if you don't think so. Anyways, Saturday, April 23rd, 1960, on the sixth day of his first expedition, he decides to cut it short because nothing had happened. He'd been staring at the water for so long. He was like, I'm sick of it. So he gets in his car. He starts driving through the upper foyers towards his hotel. He looks out over the loch and he sees a dark object moving across the surface. He remains calm, puts his car in park, turns it off, continues watching it through binoculars. It's mahogany colored and egg shaped.
Whoa.
He is quoted as saying later about this incident, I knew at once I was looking at the extraordinary humped back of some huge living creature. So he turns on his 16mm Bolex cine camera, which was still on the tripod because in his frustration, he just threw it in without taking it off the tripod. So, but it worked out, And he starts filming right out of the car. And this object leaves a V-shaped wake and was slowly submerging. And by slowly, it means it took 4 minutes for this object to submerge.
Oh, that's pretty funny. And it slowly went back, and it's like 4 minutes of like, go underwater already. I'm running out of film. 16mm expensive in 1960.
Well, he gets about 4 minutes of this, is running low on film, and tries to see if he can get closer. So he turns his car back on, drives around closer to where this thing's at. But by the time he gets there, it's gone. And that's it, man. He never comes up again.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
He took 56 expeditions to Loch Ness.
Loch Ness.
Yeah.
Well, important thing to note. Well, I mean, maybe not important, but interesting to note. He was there specifically to look for Nessie. He was on an expedition to find Nessie. He had heard about the Loch Ness Monster when reading a newspaper article, which piqued his interest enough to get him to just go to the loch and try and find her. And this, like you said, was his first expedition, but not his first day. He'd been there for a couple days and hadn't really seen anything. The information that you read just now, Eli, was there anything additionally describing how fast it was moving or how large it appeared to be? Did you say how large it appeared to be?
No, actually, I didn't. Do you have that info?
Well, what I read, and also I think the book that you were referencing, are you talking about The Man Who Filmed Nessie, that book?
No, there's a more recent one from like 2020
Okay.
or 2019.
Okay, because I think his son wrote a book about him as well.
Yeah, maybe it's not an autobiography. It might just be a biography.
Yeah. And The Man Who Filmed Nessie also has its own website. And so there's a description on there that says from 1,300 yards away, he saw a large object traveling in a zigzag pattern, leaving the V wake with no sign of a propeller wash, meaning it didn't look like it was a boat because there were no motors making the kind of waves that a boat would make. And as the object neared the shore, it turned west and almost completely submerged. Traveling just below the surface, the object kicked up a wash measured at 2 feet and moved at a speed estimated to be 7 to 10 miles per hour.
Whoa.
How you can determine all of that from that far away, I don't know. But those are his best estimates. And then another fun fact. He hung out with our water bailiff Alex Campbell while he was hanging out at the loch. So they were in contact.
Speaking of recurring characters.
Yeah, right. He made an arrangement with the hotel proprietor to retrace the object's path using a 14-foot wooden fishing boat for comparison. Did you guys read about that?
I heard he got a dinghy to take a similar track that he recorded on the remaining part of the film for comparison.
Yeah.
It doesn't say when he did that. Was it like maybe a few days or weeks after?
I'm not 100% sure. When I first read it, I thought it was later that day because the lighting was so different. But I also read that it was supposedly the next day. All I know is that some people say, yeah, he compared it with a boat and they look completely different. But then some people say he compared it with a boat and it looks exactly the same. So it's a boat. But the Royal Air Force Investigation Unit Joint Air Reconnaissance Intelligence Center, they analyzed the film in 1965 and came to the conclusion that it was genuine and that the object was neither a boat nor a submarine and was probably animate, meaning alive. But like I said, some people look at the comparison video and they're like, yeah, it's a boat. And then some people are like, no, it's different. It's not a boat. So
yeah, that as Jasmine said, the Joint Air Reconnaissance Center. I feel like I'm missing a word in there.
Intelligence
Center. Yes. Yeah. So it was about 500 people who were specialists in film. In fact, they would analyze footage and basically identify like Soviet aircraft from like blurry footage and like correctly identify the aircraft. So like these people were like pretty hardcore.
Whoa.
And it was actually I don't know this man's connection. Somehow he got in touch with Dinsdale, this guy named David James. He was a Nessie seeker himself and former member of British Parliament, and he had connections to Jarek as the acronym is.
Mhm,
And he was the one who kind of got the footage over to them
mhm.
for analysis. But also, fun fact, in the very first episode, I reference a book called The Leviathans.
Mhm.
Tim Dinsdale wrote that book in 1966. I remember saying
Whoa.
I didn't know who wrote that book, but now I know.
Haha.
He wrote a lot of books. So I think you mentioned already the amount of expeditions that he went on, being somewhere around 57 over like a period of 30 years.
Yeah.
So he wrote 4 Nessie themed books. That's not counting later editions. So like the same books were like revised and released later as well. And he's the one who filmed this footage, obviously, and he was involved in several campaigns and expeditions and schemes to try and have the Loch Ness Monster formally recognized as a genuine animal species deserving legal protection.
Good job.
Just some people go into cryptozoology with selfish, disgusting intentions, and it's nice to see that he's just trying to protect Nessie.
Mm. I mean, he gave up his career as an aeronautical engineer to pursue Nessie
Oof.
for 3 decades. And he
Oof.
was also, like we mentioned at the top of this episode, a lot of the people that we'll be talking about today come up multiple times after they've been introduced. So Tim was also a member of the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau. This was founded in somewhere in 1961 or 1962. It's not very clear to me because I hear both dates.
Ooh, I
Mhm.
got December 1961.
Okay, so maybe that's why there's an overlap. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And this was a group of dedicated amateurs whose goal was to obtain scientific evidence of the Loch Ness Monster from an observation post off on the northern shore. So basically, they would be like, "Hey, who wants to be posted here and watch the lock, and that's your shift, you guys." Like, they were literally just rotating people to keep an eye on the lock at all times that they could. Some other members of this bureau include Constance White, who we mentioned in the last episode. She wrote that book about all the sightings in the 50s and things like that. Just some fun facts about the bureau: they had an annual subscription charge, which also had to be paid, but it covered administration. And like I said, its main activity was encouraging groups of self-funded volunteers to watch the lock from different vantage points with film cameras and telescopic lenses. According to their 1969 annual report, which I skimmed, at that time it had 1,030 members, of whom 588 were from the UK and 393 were actually from the United States. And just to kind of give you an idea of like what their goal, their motto, what's the word I'm looking for?
Their mantra.
There's a word in branding that has to do with like, oh gosh, it's gonna kill
Synergy?
me that I can't think of it. If I think of it, I'll come to it later. But this is just a quote from their one of
Slogan?
the report. Other slogan, not slogan, but like, it doesn't matter. They say, for every reason, the Bureau rejects any attempt at live capture, since not only would this understandably be offensive to local sentiment, but also it might endanger the very existence of a species about whose population status we know nothing. This leaves only close-up photography, sonar sweeps, obtaining a tissue sample, passive acoustic monitoring, comparison with known underwater sounds, and an underwater search for dead remains. So their heart was very much focused on knowledge and science, but not capture or harm.
Mm-hmm. They weren't looking to shoot Nessie dead.
Yeah.
Prove her existence.
The thing about it though is I'm sure there's still plenty of other people who are like in groups like this, but the official Loch Ness Investigation Bureau that we're talking about right now concluded in 1972. So it only ran for about a decade, which is not what we said in our first episode 3 years ago. Eli, you were like, it's still a thing. Not still a thing. I mean, people are still doing the same things, but this official organization is not a thing anymore.
He meant more in like a carry it on in their spirits and in their heart, kind of like Santa during Christmas.
I think there's like some sort of online continuation of it run by Gary Campbell, I believe.
Who is different from
It-
Alex
it's-
Campbell.
Yes, not to be confused. Gary Campbell's still around. I would be very surprised if Alex Campbell was still around.
Oh, wait, that guy's still kicking it at the Loch.
But I just wanted to add on to the Loch Ness Phenomena Investigation Bureau.
Yeah, they took the word phenomena out later.
Yeah, they did, because that would mess up with their LNIB acronym, which is what I'm gonna call them now.
You
What?
can-
What?
I just said LNIB.
LNIB.
You know their first acronym was My Regional Phenomenon Investigation Bureau.
My regional MRPIB. Mr. Pibb. Nice.
Why?
It's just staring at me in the face.
Well, I'm not sure. You mentioned some names. I'm probably going to mention those names yet again, but founded by Richard Fitter, another guy named Sir Peter Scott, who was not a sir yet at the time. He didn't become a sir until 1973. But Sir Peter Scott was inspired by Constance White's books, More Than a Legend. And then they were all collectively inspired by the Dinsdale footage. So everything's kind of building on top of everything. See, guys, it looks like we know what we're doing.
Oh, you mean it looks like we had an outline for today's episode that we followed and were able to organize?
Yeah,
Cool. I like that.
it looks like that.
Whoa.
Well, anyways.
You know
go
what's
ahead.
weird is looking at the Loch Ness Phenomena Investigation Bureau, the interesting thing is if I had a nickel for every time Tim Dinsdale twice acted as the group commander, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's kind of interesting that it happened 2 times.
That brings us to character number 2.
Don Cheadle.
No.
No, close. This is Frederick William Holliday,
Mhm.
aka Ted. So,
He goes
Yeah.
by Ted?
yeah, he goes by Ted. Ted
Oh.
Holliday.
I don't think I knew that. Hopefully I didn't confuse myself. No, I
Well,
think
I'm-
everything I read called him Frederick or just by his last name, Holiday.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably end up calling him Holiday most of the time, but
Yeah.
yeah, he went by Ted,
Okay.
just in case y'all were wondering.
Yeah.
You know? What if he went around like, please call me Frederick William?
Okay,
It'd
Ted.
be very formal.
Ted Holliday was inspired by the harrowing year of 1933 when he was only 12 years old and saw the Hugh Gray photograph. Whoa.
Which we
Again.
talked about in our last episode.
Again, it looks like we know what we're doing.
Hey, it's the Loch
It's all an
Ness.
illusion.
It's the Loch Ness cinematic universe. It's all paying off.
Oh, the Cryptids cinematic universe. Anyways, Ted served in the Royal Air Force from 1939 to 1946. So not sure what he did or if he saw action during World War II, but that's pretty interesting stuff. He made his first trip to the Loch in 1962. And this is when it starts getting freaky deaky here. All right, first night at Loch Ness. Homie camps out under the stars. And then he gets a feeling not of, I'm about to embark on this great journey. He gets a feeling of foreboding. get this. Get this. Direct quote here. After sunset, Loch Ness is not a water by which to linger. The feeling is hard to define and impossible to explain. After dark, I felt that Loch Ness was better left alone.
Whoa. Whoa.
Right at midnight, he's awakened from his slumber. Remember, he's outside. He's not camping like in a car. He's not in a hotel. He's right next to the water. He wakes up to the sound of huge waves hitting the shore. So he springs up and he looks around. There's no boats around. There's nobody around. But he could see that the water had been disturbed by something big. And he had no idea what it was. But yeah, 2 days later is the first time he ever saw the Loch Ness Monster. He was scanning the waters at dawn, and he caught sight of something large and black breaking the water, emerging at a height of 3 feet out of the water, and it's about 45 feet long. And then the water churns violently, and then it disappears underneath the waves.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So Frederick William Holliday was also part of the Loch Ness Phenomena Investigation Bureau. He joined in 1963.
LNIB.
And his opinion on Nessie changes throughout time. But at the beginning of his interest, the beginning of his expeditions, he believed the Loch Ness Monster to be like a flesh and blood animal. And in his 1968 book, The Great Orm of Loch Ness, he postulates that the creature in the loch is an invertebrate creature similar in form to the extinct Tullymunstrum gregarium. I'm really bad with those kinds of names. I think I'm saying that right. Does that look right to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks right, but what is that?
So the Illinois State Geological Survey states that, and I like the nickname they give it. They just call it the Tully Monster. So the Tully Monster was a soft-bodied invertebrate marine animal, an animal that has no shell and no backbone and lived in the ocean. It had an elongate segmented body that tapered at both ends. At the front was a long snout ending in a jaw with 8 tiny teeth. At the other end was a tail and 2 fins. 2 eyes on stalks projected out sideways near the front of the body. Judging from the streamlined shape, flexible body, and maneuverable fins, it's likely the Tully Monster was an active swimmer. Perhaps like a modern squid, it hovered near the sea bottom. The Tully Monster's jaw and apparent swimming abilities suggest that they attacked other marine animals such as jellyfish and shrimp, perhaps piercing their prey with their teeth and sucking out the juices.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Getting a little prehistoric on them.
That's what it says. But it went extinct about 300 million years ago.
So it is prehistoric. And it's a slug.
Oh,
Yeah,
It's a giant slug.
you're right.
It's full slug with teeth. Ew.
Gross.
Ew. It was, yeah. And that's what Mr. Holliday believed these Loch Ness monsters were. Just giant slugs.
Yeah. And
That's so good.
oftentimes referred to the Loch Ness Monster in the plural sense. So there's arguments that it's one singular creature, but also that it could be multiple. Like there could be a population of Nessies out there.
Yeah. There could be a whole population of giant slugs in Loch Ness. We don't know.
They'll grab on me and suck that juices out straight away.
Well, think about it. It's the perfect culprit, dude. There isn't much left, right? When it dies.
It's like those things in the remake of the 1933 King Kong by Peter Jackson, where those big slugs come out and they start eating Lumpy the Cook.
Yeah. R.I.P., dude. Andy Serkis, dude.
Every movie, they got to kill them off.
Yeah. But anyways, Ted Holliday believes in this slug theory so much that he writes a book on it. In 1968, it comes out, The Great Orm of Loch Ness, not worm, Orm, because that is the older version. That's the older way of saying worm.
Okay, that's interesting, and I'm glad you said that because I tried finding a definition for the word orm, couldn't. I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm not going to worry about it. You're telling me it's worm?
Yeah,
It's worm. It's worm. It's just like
it's a way to
15th
to
century.
have worm on the cover without saying my book is called The Giant Worm of Loch Ness.
I'm done. Orm is worm. I freaking looked on the internet for definitions, found all these acronyms. I was like, that can't be right. And you're telling me it means worm. Okay.
Why
great.
didn't you just ask us? Why didn't you?
Because I was busy
Yeah,
doing research, man.
Jasmine was out there Badam zinging it out like crazy.
Anyway, okay. That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that information. I wasn't
Yes.
aware.
So, everyone, bear witness to the transformation from giant slug to demonic entity.
Because what is it? Does he follow up? Is it the second book? He's called The Dragon and the Disc that he puts out.
Yeah.
Which is wildly different. Yeah.
I don't know if it's is it the second one? I know it
I
comes
think
out
so.
in 1972.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Oh yeah, it is his second book.
Yeah, first he comes out with a book that says, all right, there's giant slugs that will suck your brain out in Loch Ness. And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. And then a few years later, he's like, oh no, by the way, actually, like demonic, like dragons or something, right? Isn't that what he's saying?
Yeah, dude. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is how it goes down. The transformation begins literally just a few months after his first book comes out. Poor guy.
Got to retcon the whole thing.
Well, it comes from talking to witnesses over the years, specifically people who attempted to take photos of Loch Ness.
For example, what I have in August 1968, even though there were several witnesses along the shore, Nessie chose to appear in one of the very few places that was obscured from the various cameras. Is one report that Holliday came across. Our observers were watchful and keen, but they had seen nothing. The phenomenon had concealed itself, so there was nothing for them to see. That doesn't sound as exciting as I thought it. It just sounds like she was behind a bush the whole time.
Yeah. So basically, as time went on and as Holliday talked to witnesses and, hung out on the loch on his own as well, it became abundantly obvious that it was not mere chance that things like camera malfunctions would be happening. So like whenever people would go to grab their camera, Nessie would sink or hide behind something. And even when someone just thought about taking a picture, the monster would vanish below and she'd take a dive. Camera malfunctions, pictures come out blurry, blank, black, fogged. It was as if Nessie were dictating and manipulating the situations in which the witnesses found themselves. And this is what Holliday came to believe. There were far more than a random number of reports on record where photography failed miserably. So he kind of starts to be like, this is weird. How come every single time? Which honestly is something that I've thought about too with any sort of cryptid investigation. You watch any sort of paranormal investigation show where they're out in the wild trying to find some kind of cryptid creature, something always happens. Equipment malfunctions, the weather doesn't cooperate, something always goes wrong that prevents them from getting the evidence that we all want.
It is. It's true. It's actually pretty wild.
Right? I mean, there's that old joke that Bigfoot's just blurry in real life, but
Yeah.
it's not a joke anymore. It's real life.
So basically, as he's making these observations and talking to people, and he's kind of like connecting these dots, he ends up coming up with the idea that there are certain commonalities between paranormal phenomena and certain reported sightings on the loch. He also believed that there's a relationship between ancient dragon legends, like Alex mentioned earlier, and contemporary UFO phenomena.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. So, though he maintained in the book that he still believed the monster was an invertebrate animal, there was a paranormal aspect to it reminiscent of ancient water horse legends, which he could not fully explain. So now he's kind of in the middle of this thought progression. It went from being, okay, yeah, Nessie is a flesh and blood animal
Slug.
in the water,
Yeah.
slug. Now it's, oh, it's an animal, it's a creature, but it has some sort of tie to the paranormal. There's something else happening, but it's still a creature that exists. And then it continues into something more.
Well, let me shed light on that because I don't know if you guys would have found this because I did some Google searching and I couldn't find this outside of Nick Redfern's book, which I've been using Nick Redfern's book for the past 2 episodes. This is Nessie, the Supernatural Origins.
Okay.
Okay, it's just Nessie, and then it's something, and I don't remember what it is. I should just pull it up. Anyways,
It's Nessie. It's something.
it's something. Anyways, 1969 at the. Remember when we talked about the Boleskine house and the old cemetery? Yeah. Oh, maybe you do have this. I don't know. Jasmine's smiling.
Well, I just have a very general statement. You're probably going to give more details, but Holliday became fascinated by the fact that Aleister Crowley had lived at Loch Ness in the Boleskine house. And this led to Holliday learning about a dragon worshipping cult.
Oh, okay. This is why though. This is why. Okay.
All right. I'm ready.
We have a trio of American students who, for whatever reason, are poking around in that old cemetery, which has a reputation for being haunted already before the Boleskine house was even built. They're walking around and they find a tapestry.
I did read this.
Yeah, a tapestry wrapped around a conch shell. They unwrap it. The snake, it has a snake-like image on it with Turkish writing on it, which translates to serpent. And also there's lotus flowers depicted on it, which in Chinese lore, lotus flowers are left on the shores of lakes where dragons are said to live because it's their favorite food.
Whoa.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And then Ted Holliday examines the tapestry and it's dry without any mildew, suggesting that it had been left there either the day before or even just a few hours before it was discovered. So like it wasn't there for a very long time. Yeah.
Dang.
So that leads him to the conclusion that there's some sort of cult that worships the Loch Ness Monster at night.
Yeah. And then things get really crazy.
and then the cannibalism started.
Well,
so Holliday, seeing the tapestry, knowing the history of Crowley at the Boleskine house and all the other weird stuff that happened at the house, kind of comes up with this wild conclusion, but a conclusion that actually returns later in the 90s. Anyways, I don't want to reveal too much, but basically he believes that this mystery cult that worships the Loch Ness Monster by night are actually worshippers of Tiamat, which is a Babylonian snake goddess, which was revered and feared. Tiamat was slain by the god of the storms, a guy or a four-eyed giant named Marduk. However, if you were in the know, you could still call upon Tiamat's power to achieve wealth, power, and influence. And the way she would manifest herself is in the form of a sea serpent or a sea monster.
Whoa.
And that's what he believed the Loch Ness Monster was. It was the manifestation of Tiamat. Oh, wait.
Oh.
I don't know where to share this, but this is also part of the never-ending saga here. Okay, so Ted Holliday is at a dinner with an underwater engineer named Robert Love in 1970. Also at the dinner is an American named Dr. John Dee. John Dee was an occultist, And he whispers to Holliday at one point during the dinner that he had an ancestor of the same name who lived when Queen Elizabeth I reigned. He's referring to John Dee, who helped establish some of the occult writings that Aleister Crowley drew from to perform some of his rituals.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Everything's connected.
And so Holliday took this as like a veiled threat, as like, don't stick your nose in places where it doesn't belong. I'm not sure if that's what Dr. John Dee meant by that. He could have just been like, hey, check out this interesting folklore. And
Hey,
like,
check out this Snapple fact. And the other guy's like, whoa, this guy's bad news. These freaking cults trying to keep our noses out of it.
But yeah.
Well, the idea that the Loch Ness Monster was a malevolent supernatural entity reached its peak in the early 1970s. And on the night of June 2nd, 1973, Ted Holliday took part in an exorcism at Loch Ness.
Yeah, it's wild.
An exorcism which was performed by perhaps the 20th century's most renowned exorcist, Reverend Donald Omand, who had a deep interest in tales of lake monsters and believed them to also have paranormal origins. So before we get into the actual exorcism, I think we want to talk about the Reverend a little bit, right?
Yes. Oh, okay, good.
Alex, what do you have on Reverend Donald Omand?
Oh man, this guy got around and exorcised some demons.
He did though.
Just to name a claim of fame, not only is he the man who exorcised Loch Ness, he's also known as the man who exorcised the Bermuda Triangle.
Really?
Wait, really?
That's what came up when I was looking on Google. He tried to do an exorcism on the Bermuda Triangle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was just like going anywhere that they were like, oh yeah, this could be a demonic entity, a strange doorway into worlds unknown. He's like, I'm there, power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ. He's like on his knees crying, flies on his face as he's like exorcising Cthulhu out of the Bermuda Triangle.
That's crazy.
My goodness.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of it. He went around. He was famous for showboating and exercising and all kinds of stuff. I don't know if you have any actual like lifestyles of the man.
I got that he was famous for exercising animals like lions, tigers, and bears.
Oh my.
Yeah. Because sometimes they believed those were demonic possessed animals. I can't say whether yes or no, but
I mean, they're going around eating people. Is that not a demon?
Or they could just be hungry. I don't know.
So Holliday actually ended up writing a letter to Reverend Donald Omand. I don't exactly know what that letter stated, but I think it had something to do with like Holliday's beliefs that whatever was in the lake was evil. Go ahead.
Do you know why he was so interested in lake monsters in particular?
Who? The Reverend?
The Reverend, yeah.
Not exactly.
I mean,
it's I have a story for you.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it begins in 1967, and Omand, has a sighting of a creature not at Loch Ness, but at Loch Long in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
He sees this thing surface and then disappear below the waves, causing the water to bubble and boil, as he said. 1968, Omand tells his Norwegian friend, Jan Anderson, of the sighting. So his friend is like, hey, let's go to the Fjord of Trolls, which is the eeriest waterway in Norway. And as they're sailing through, the water begins to bubble and a hump comes out of the water, heads straight for their ship. Omand is like, oh my goodness, we're going to die. And then it diverts and goes back underwater. Nothing happened, right? Nothing happened besides what they saw. And Anderson turns to Omand and tells him, even though this didn't do us physical harm, this is a malevolent creature. And he's like, I don't understand. It didn't hurt us though.
Right.
And Anderson is like, well, these creatures don't bring physical harm because they want you to think that they're good, benevolent creatures. But really, what they want is that they want to disrupt your mind and your character to the point of provoking anxiety, paranoia, and finally, mental collapse. He publishes that whole experience in Experiences of a Present-Day Priest, which Ted Holliday read and then inspired him to write the letter.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Thank you for that connection. So the Reverend Omand, we're not quite sure exactly the proper pronunciation.
Omand.
Omand. He believed that the monster's manifestations were not in themselves evil, but rather that evil had attached itself to the phenomenon and to the area. So he believed that he could purge the loch, the creature, of this evil, yet leave the creature intact. That's not what Holliday believed. Holliday believed it was all evil and needed to go away.
Yeah, damn.
So
He's going full Doc Holiday over there.
is there anything you guys want to add before we get into the actual exorcism? What a statement. I never thought I would say that. Anything you guys want to add before we get into the exorcism?
The BBC was supposed to film it, but they showed up late.
Was that the case, or was it? I thought that it was they didn't want it to be contaminated, so they agreed to do a reenactment, because there are photos of like a reenactment.
Yeah,
I don't think it was that they were late.
I read that they were late. I read that they showed up late. And so they because they wanted to do the real thing. But then I don't know. Maybe what you're saying is true.
I'm not sure.
The world may never know.
Alex, anything you want to add before we
just real quick. It is interesting that here's yet another holy man encountering a sea serpent that's connected to some kind of loch.
Yeah, St. Columbia.
St. Columba, we were talking about St. Patrick.
Yeah, you're right. So Reverend Omand was not the only exorcist involved in this. He sought the advice of a fellow exorcist, Reverend Dom Robert Petitpierre, a monk of the Anglican Order of Saint Benedict. Dom Robert, this is how they set up the exorcism, guys. Dom Robert took a large map of the loch and drew a cross upon it. The top of the crucifix was at the Inverness end of the loch, and the base was near Fort Augustus. The intersection terminated on the left at Drumnadrochit, which is that's a mouthful. I wrote that out in syllables to make sure I said it right. Drumnadrochit. And on the right at a point between this one, I couldn't find any YouTube videos where the person pronounced the word. That's what I try to do when I see a place that I don't know how to pronounce. I YouTube it and try to find like travel vlogs of people who've been there, because they'll always be like, "Hey, I'm at blah blah blah." Couldn't find one for this, but it's Inverfergeg, I think.
And we're here to put them on the map.
I don't know.
Anyways, left at Drumnadrochit and on the right at a point between Inverfergeg and Doors, the men planned preliminary exorcisms at each of these points. And the final rite was to be carried out in the center of the cross, which was at the middle of the loch, in a boat. All points of entry and exit along waterways were bound against evil to stop the contamination spreading during the ritual. And so between them, the exorcists drew up a rite from German, Spanish, Roman, Greek, and English sources, and accompanied by Holliday, Dr. Why did I stick an R in his name? It's not Ormond. It's Omand. Omand. I wrote Ormond. Accompanied by Holliday, he exorcised all of the points, and eventually on a small boat, he rowed to the center of the loch. There, floating on 800 feet of cold black water, he gave the final exorcism. I adjure thee, thou ancient serpent, by the judge of the quick and the dead, by him who made thee and the world, that thou cloak thyself no more in manifestation of prehistoric demons, which henceforth shall bring no sorrow to the children of men. Mic drop.
Well, yeah, straight into the water. Sonar dropped it.
Did you not
Interesting.
have that text, Eli?
I have a different text.
Oh,
I'll tell you.
interesting.
May I share? I have some interesting things
Okay.
that yeah, so I got there physically in person. Holliday was there, Omand was there, Tony Artis, a British Army captain, was there, and a photographer friend of Omand, who is not named in my source. And Omand actually asked the three of them to kneel down so he could anoint them with holy water before commencing even the first exorcism.
Makes
And
sense.
as soon as he anoints them, a cold wind comes through the air.
Ooh.
Yeah. And apparently, I guess they didn't know what to expect, but all of them were like freaked out as Omand was like doing this exorcism. Everyone was like, oh man, this is real. This is happening.
They probably never been to an exorcism before.
Yeah, probably.
Let alone one for prehistoric demons.
Right?
And Omand even sprinkled holy water into the lock itself. And so, and they also did this at night. They didn't do this in like the middle of the day.
At night.
They had to have that shot of the fog rolling in as the moon opened up the lock as they stood there with their bags and their little hat and trench coat.
Yeah. As for the words that Omand said, this is what I came across.
Well, before you read it, I will just say it was apparently pulled from German, Spanish, Roman, Greek, and English sources. So there's probably some translation things happening. Is it at all similar? I know you're about to read it, but is it at all similar to what I read? Okay.
It's similar. It's a little bit longer though. So here we go. Hopefully nothing happens as I read this.
I didn't think about that. I was just reading the text. I wasn't really performing an exorcism.
Yeah. This is what I got. I exorcise thee, O creature of salt, by the living God, by the true God, by the holy God, by that God, who by the prophet Eliseus commanded thee to be cast into the water to cure its barrenness, that thou mayest by this exorcism be made beneficial to the faithful, and become to all those who make use of thee healthful both to soul and body, and that in whatsoever place thou shalt be sprinkled, all illusions and wickedness and crafty wiles of Satan may be chased away and depart from that place, and every unclean spirit commanded in his name, who is to come to judge the living and the dead in the world by fire.
Yeah, that's the extended director's cut version.
Yeah. Although they cut out the best part, which is the judge of the quick and the dead.
But okay, but when you said that it was in multiple languages, do you think he said it in those multiple languages and maybe it was like a slightly different script in different languages?
Probably.
I'm not sure.
You know, because like in all those exorcist type movies, they're always speaking Latin.
Yeah,
know?
you're right.
So
Yeah.
like
I'm not sure what language he performed it in.
maybe he did all four because you don't know what Nessie speaks, you know?
Mm-hmm.
True.
He's like, you could be saying it in English. And he's like, oh, no hablo inglés, bro. Like,
yeah, the technicalities of exorcisms.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get it. I didn't understand any of that. So
You're
invalid.
gonna have to do that again. And so, well, sorry, one last note here. So when he performed it for the fourth and final time when they were on the water, okay, so check it. They go out on the water.
Mhm.
They go out on the water.
At
The
night.
water at night. The water was calm until he starts speaking. Then the waves start getting tumultuous. The wind starts blowing, gets real dramatic. Then, as soon as Omand finishes the exorcism and pours the last bit of holy water into the lock, they're expecting everything to just like calm down, but instead he like shrivels up and keels over.
He does. He
Yeah.
felt drained and fell into a deep sleep.
But they
I
didn't
thought
know
you meant he died. Like
No, he
they-
didn't die.
he's like, and my work is done, and he died.
Dude, well, they were freaking out, Holiday and everyone, because they're like, they didn't know what was going on, you know.
Right.
But later he said, oh, it's completely normal for that to happen after an exorcism. They didn't know that. He didn't
Right.
forewarn them. They're just like,
Ugh.
it's coming back. It's gonna kill
Ah.
us.
You got to keep your electrolytes up when you're doing exorcisms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he passes out after the exorcism, but then when he wakes up and everything, he's pretty optimistic that he succeeded and that he cleared it all out. Now, perhaps the evil was banished, but considering that sightings still occur today, there's still something out in the water. There's still creatures. There's still something that people are seeing.
Well, Holiday, I don't think Holiday was convinced.
No, Holiday wasn't convinced, especially after what happened the next day for him.
Yes. Oh, you came across this. Sick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know what we're referencing, Alex?
I have no idea.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, this is weird.
All right.
Tell me.
Okay. So before heading home, Holliday had a very ominous encounter. So in his own words, which come from his book, The Goblin Universe, which was published after his death, he says, "The next morning before breakfast, I decided to step down to the lower caravan to collect some oddments from my suitcase. It was a beautiful fresh morning and the lawns were wet with dew. As I turned the corner of the house, I stopped involuntarily. Across the grass, beyond the roadway, and at the top of the slope leading down to Loch Ness, at the top of which the caravan was located, stood a figure." He continues, "It was a man dressed entirely in black. Unlike other walkers who sometimes pause along here to admire the Loch Ness panorama, this one had his back to the loch and was staring at me fixedly as soon as I turned the corner. He says he felt a strong sensation of malevolence, cold, and passionless. The mysterious figure was attired in an outfit that Holliday said looked like black plastic. He wore black gloves and black headgear, which resembled a biker's helmet. And Holliday tentatively walked towards the man in black. And as Holliday got close to the man in black, he was shocked to see that the man wore goggles, but appeared to have no eyes behind the goggles.
Whoa.
Holliday's quick thinking, he was like, oh, let me trip and see, like, let me pretend to fall and see if the guy will reach out to try and help me so I can get a closer look at him. So he pretends to fall in the grass and reaches out to the man for support, specifically to see if he was in physical form or some kind of like ghost specter. But he was prevented from doing so when the sounds of whistling and unintelligible whispering filled the air. And this dude dematerializes.
Whoa.
Dude,
Disappears.
it's psycho.
That's
God.
crazy.
Holliday's looking around the mile of open road that he was in, the landscape, wondering where this guy could have gone, even though he just watched him dematerialize. And so he tried to convince himself that it was all just a bizarre I almost said hallucination.
Oh.
Wow. Say the word hallucination. Got it.
Hallucination.
But he knew deep down that it wasn't a hallucination. And so continue years down the road, he returned to Loch Ness in 1974 to continue investigations, and he was stopped after a few days because he had a heart attack. And as the stretcher carried him up the side of the loch, he peered over to the side and noticed that he had just passed over the exact spot where the man in black had stood the previous year. So it wasn't years later, it was the next year he went back.
Next year.
He says synchronicity and the forces that control it never give up. Go ahead.
Okay. It's nuts, right? What you just said.
Yeah.
But here is more synchronicity that is so weird. Okay. It's just like so bizarre. 1972, so I'm going back a few years. The former owner of the Bleskin House was a British actor named George Sanders, who, I guess, how do we say it? Trigger alert? How do we say sensitive content incoming?
Yeah, trigger warning.
Trigger warning, yes. George Sanders acted in his final film called Psychomania, which I'm going to talk about in a second.
Oh my gosh, I know where you're going with this. I read about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Wow.
But George Sanders lived in the Boleskine house and killed himself in the Boleskine house. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it was a drug overdose, an intentional one. But yeah, so his final movie, Psychomania, is
Which I want to watch. I saw the trailer. I kind of want to watch this movie.
it sounds cool.
I don't
So
know if it would be available anywhere though.
But
Maybe
anyways,
The
not.
Criterion channel.
it might be on there. So it involves it I guess it circles around or centers around a motorcycle gang that call themselves the Living Dead. They have that name emblazoned on the back of their leather jackets, and they hang around at this place called the Seven Witches, which is a Stonehenge like area, right? I mean, you basically get the idea of the stones and the circle and everything. And so basically they followed the directions of a supernatural ritual, and one by one the gang members kill themselves, but they don't stay dead. They come back to life and go on murder sprees.
Whoa.
Yeah. And basically the description of the Man in Black Ted Holliday saw is almost like exactly what the biker gang looks like in the film Psychomania.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then to make it all even more dark, Ted Holliday actually died from another heart attack that he had in 1979. He wasn't even 60.
Well, he did a hell of a lot.
Dude, yeah, I was reading that some people think that it was the Loch Ness Monster that got him in that sort of spiritual sense. It's I don't know, dude. It's just freaky.
A lot of weird stuff. A lot of weird coincidences.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of the Stonehenge, or the Seven Witches, as it's called in the movie Psychomania, there is sort of a connection into Loch Ness. So in 1976, the Academy of Applied Sciences had an expedition to find the Loch Ness Monster. And there was a guy named Marty Klein who was part of the expedition, but the expedition was actually led by another character that we're going to get into shortly, named Dr. Robert Rines. And they did some sonar work, and they came across these stone structures beneath the surface of the loch, one at 30 feet and one at 70 feet. And they were stone circles ranging in size 15 feet to 150 feet in diameter, with some of them overlapping each other, intersecting, things like that. And they're called Kleinhenge 1 and 2 after Marty Klein, who's kind of the one who discovered them.
And because it resembled Stonehenge.
Yeah. And no one really knows how old they are or who built them or if they're accidental.
How they got there and stuff.
Yeah. Some people think it has Neolithic origins. Other people suggest. I don't really understand this statement because it sounds to me like the stones seem like they were placed very intentionally. And some suggest the stones were nothing stranger than material dredged from the nearby River Ness when the building of the Caledonian Canal was underway early in the 19th century. Or, sea monster cult worship stuff.
Possible closed gateway from Atlantis.
Oh,
Could be.
on that same sort of topic about finding things underwater, this was not in our outline. This was not something that we formally talked about, but I found it in my research and I wanted to talk about it. It's another fun little thing. Measuring 30 feet, there was a model that was built in 1969 for a movie called The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, directed by Billy Wilder.
Yeah.
Starring Sir Robert Stevens and Sir Christopher Lee. There was a robot that captured images in 2016 of a structure lying deep in the waters of the loch. And that structure was a Loch Ness Monster. Adrian Shine, who we've mentioned previously, said, "We have found a monster, but not the one many people might have expected. It was a model built with a neck and 2 humps and taken alongside a pier for filming of portions of the film in 1969. The director did not want the humps and asked that they be removed, despite warnings from the rest of production that this would affect the buoyancy of the structure. And so it sank. The model sank all the way to the bottom of the loch. And after the model sank, there was a new monster that was made using just its head and neck, and filming was then transferred to a large water tank in the film studio. So I don't know if it's still down there. It might be. I don't know for sure. But if you want to watch that movie, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes follows the detective as he investigates the disappearance of an engineer, which is a search that leads him to Loch Ness, where he encounters the monster. So Sherlock Holmes, Loch Ness Monster.
Christopher Lee. Oh yeah.
There's a little pop culture reference for you guys.
Yeah, that movie is pretty wild. Well, Billy Wilder directed it, but I didn't know this. Billy Wilder was like part of the CIA or something back in the day. And there's, man, I'm going to butcher this so much. Basically, back in the day, the CIA was doing experiments with submarines in an American lake. And so they made up a bunch of lake monster sightings to get people to stay away from said lake. And Billy Wilder was like there, part of this operation, and then later used that as the plot for The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. So basically in the movie, the Loch Ness Monster is a submarine.
Interesting. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert for a movie from 1969.
It's Billy Wilder though. You know it's gonna be good. Go watch it. In case
wacky.
He directed Sunset Boulevard. He directed Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe. Great movies, both of those. He's directed other stuff, but I've never been disappointed by one of his movies. Go check him out. Anyways, we're going to rewind the clock a little bit, and we're actually going to talk about the movie yet again. It'll come up again here in a minute. This takes us to character number 3. Dr. Robert Rines, who I just mentioned. So Dr. Robert Rines is from Boston, Massachusetts. He was the president of the Academy of Applied Sciences, which explains why he was heading the expedition in 1976. He is also a skilled musician and composer.
Wrote that down himself.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting. And so basically 1972, the night of August 7th and then into the morning of August 8th, something happens at Loch Ness. He's there with the homies. They're taking it. Well, not quite. They're on a boat and they have this sonar device. They're on a boat just off the coast of Urquhart Castle on the loch. They have this sonar device anchored about 35 feet below their boat. It's set to take photos every 15 seconds. And then it captures something. The length is about 20 to 30 feet, and it causes nearby fish to scatter. So, and it's taken photos, and it supposedly took 2 photos of whatever this large object was. And it looks like a flipper. And I don't know if you guys, it's pretty clear what it looks like. It looks like a flipper.
It looks like a squid head to me.
Most people think it looks like a flipper.
It looks like a squid to me. But no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can see how it would be a flipper, like the big mass and then the flipper coming off the side. So I'm just being devil's advocate right now.
Well,
but there's no squids in the loch, are there?
So this is where I'm going to bring up Darren Naish. We mentioned him in the second episode. I mentioned my thoughts on Darren Naish. he says that this photo is fake, and I read his article on it, and I agree with the dude. Here's why. Basically, it's not just him. Darren Naish is not the first person to say it was fake. In fact, the first person to say this photo is not real was the dude in the boat with Rines at the time when the photo was taken.
That's a major blow.
Yeah. This dude's name was Dick Rayner, and basically he says that the photo, there's shadows that don't make sense in the photo.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying that it's not possible unless the photo was manipulated. And it's true. Rines admitted that it was computer enhanced, but he didn't let anyone see the original photo for a long time. So we don't know exactly what computer enhanced meant until the original photo came out, which I'm about to send to you guys right now.
Whoa. Stop the beast.
It doesn't look anything like what he released to the public.
I can kind of see it, like,
Sure.
I can see that, like,
there's the through line.
yeah,
but,
and I
like,
was just gonna say that light.
This guy took the grease pen tool in Photoshop and just went to town.
Creative liberties.
Yeah, and so basically Darren Naish says this is probably a picture of the floor of Loch Ness, like just the ground. But he says it's not a hoax in the sense that Rines wanted to deceive everyone. It's that he believed that he actually got a photo of a flipper and just wanted to enhance it so that people could also see. Because I mean, the original really is not impressive, you know. You're not sure what you're even looking at, you know.
Yeah.
The first one I sent to you guys is very clear, like, oh wow, that looks like something. And so that's what he wanted, essentially. It wasn't overly deceptive to try to get rich or anything. It was just so that it would bring awareness to what he thought he actually captured. Although this is kind of interesting. So Rines and Sir Peter Scott, I mentioned him not too long ago. He founded LNIB along with several other people. And him and Rines created a new term, a scientific term for Nessie called Nessiteris rhombopteryx. Kind of a mouthful, but that is an anagram for Monster Hoax by Sir Peter S.
Whoa.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. It's looking pretty sus. Then, 1975, Rines gets more photographs from the loch. Yeah, so we got one that appears to show the body and neck of a creature, and then another one which shows the head of a creature.
That looks like COVID. That second photo looks like the COVID cell image that you see with the ball with the little spikies everywhere. I do not see how this looks like a head. I totally see the first photo. I can obviously see what that's supposed to look like. I don't see what we're supposed to be looking at in the second photo.
Yeah, I don't either.
Oh, okay.
A couple of people, Darren Naish included, think that those two photos are actually of a log.
A log. Okay.
Like a log in the water. And then some people think the head photo is actually the deteriorated head from the Billy Wilder movie.
Oh, I think I see what is the mouth supposed to be open?
I think so.
Maybe. So maybe it's like tilted a little bit and it's like looking at you.
Yeah, I don't really know. I still don't see anything there.
Anyway.
I could see a log. For sure, but yeah. And
pretty grotesque, yes.
basically Rines wanted these photos to like really take off, but in the 1970s, interest in the Loch Ness Monster was pretty low. So the photos didn't really escape national. They didn't even really make national headlines. They were just kind of like local.
Mhm.
So whatevs, you live and you learn.
Just goes to show that you can't try to force a brand unless the public wants it.
Yeah.
The next character in our story is a fella named Doc Shields.
Yeah.
Not Shields, Shields.
You dropped the D. Couldn't afford
So,
it.
well, he's a wizard, surrealist, conjurer, stage magician, and playwright, among a few of his titles.
Yeah.
Might have opened multiple doorways to other dimensions, let some monsters in. One of them that he kind of claims is the Owl Man,
Yeah.
also in the UK. I'm not sure. I didn't get into that. I'm not here to talk about that today.
Thank you.
Many of his rituals involved naked witches dancing around bodies of water.
Okay.
He was trying to raise monsters out of.
So, yeah, he joins. At least they have a cool name. It's Psychic 7 International, or PSI, who performed rituals butt naked on the shores of many lakes in Ireland and Scotland, specifically ones that had monster traditions, in order to invoke the presence of sea monsters across the planet. What the purpose of that was, what they're like, I don't get what they're trying to achieve with that.
They're just trying to raise the monsters, man.
They just really, really liked sea monsters,
Yeah. And so the first one the ritual started on January 31st, 1977. Took 3 days to complete. And did it work? Maybe, kind of. Because on January 31st, here's a brief little overview. Lake monster reports came from Kazakhstan, Lake Marar in Scotland, the San Francisco Bay, and there was 3 sightings of Nessie on that one day.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I didn't realize there was that connection.
So did it work? Did these butt naked people?
Well, here's my question. Did the world know that this ritual was going to be taking place? Because that would have an effect on it. If it was something that they just did in like not secret, but like it was just themselves, and then this happened, then I'd be like, whoa. But if it's like, hey guys, we're doing a ritual and we're gonna raise some sea monsters, of course the next day people are gonna be like, oh my god, I saw it.
I don't think so.
Raises questions, yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on if it's just breaking news. There's naked people that are dancing at the locks and they're trying to make monsters show up. And I mean, if you're gonna try to summon a sea monster, might as well be in the nude.
But he himself, he saw the Loch Ness Monster not until May. Is that correct?
Correct.
Alex, did you get this guy's story?
Yeah, I got a little bit about this guy. So you're saying what I have is May 21st, 1977. Anthony Doc Shales. He's camping next to Urquhart Castle. Took some of the clearest pictures of the monster until this day, he claims. And he also claims he summoned the monster out of the water. And he describes it as an elephant squid, claiming the long neck shown in the photograph is actually the squid's trunk, and the white spot at the base of the neck is its eye. Due to lack of ripples, it has been declared a hoax by a number of people.
Yeah. So that's the main points. Yeah, that was like all of the, that was very quick. That was like all of the things. There's some details to throw in there. So he traveled to Scotland with his wife Chris because he had performed this ritual. And he was in the car park, which I think means parking lot.
I think so.
Car park of
it's not a theme park of cars.
No, He was at a lodge with 4 friends when they saw 3 humps gliding through the water about 900 feet away in the direction of Fort Augustus. None of them had a camera on them at the time. So
Do you know
him
why?
and his wife, I do not know why.
Because they were waiting for the breakfast place to open.
Nice.
So yeah.
So
And then, so when that happened though, he vows to never be around Loch Ness without a camera on him.
makes sense. So after this, him and his wife, they hitchhike to Drumnadrocket, and from there walk to Urquhart Castle, which overlooks the loch. And around 4 p.m., he's hanging out in a ruined tower, looking over the water from the window, this time with his camera. And he says, quite suddenly, a small dark head on the end of a long, sinuous neck broke the surface of the water about 100 yards away. It was undoubtedly the Loch Ness Monster, proudly erectile, ready to be snapped.
Oh.
I instantly raised my camera and shot 2 pictures during the few seconds the creature was visible. Its neck was 4 or 5 feet long, greenish brown with a yellowish underside. Its opened mouth head was tiny in relation to the muscular neck. The animal turned away from me, straightening its neck before sinking vertically. And his friend, David Clark, arranges for the high-speed Ektachrome film to be developed by Nuquay Color Services, who handled most of the color transparency work for Cornish Life magazine. And the 2 snaps were startling in their clarity, showing the muscles in the beast's neck and its open mouth, and the gleam of an eye even seems to be visible. It has a nickname. It's called the Muppet photo because it looks so much like a Muppet. Like it's just a puppet. Like, look at its mouth. Look at its mouth.
It looks.
It's like
fake.
Yeah. So before we talk about the like fakeness of it and how people think it's a hoax, so going back to what Alex said about it possibly being a squid, Shields had an unusual take on what this photo actually represented. So at the time, I think he thought, oh, it's a neck and a head. But after he looked at it more and thought about it more, he said that rather being a head and a neck of a plesiosaur-like animal, he proposed that the object was a probe-like. It's longer than that. The word is longer than that. There's more syllables. Yeah, that. Proboscis-like structure mounted on the head of a new kind of giant freshwater squid. Now, what I find most intriguing about this fact is that in 1984, the Fortean Times, Shields proposed that this squid, this freshwater squid, had inflatable humps on its back, the ability to change color, and the ability to crawl on land. Shout out Spicer.
Did it carry small animals in its proboscis-like appendices?
Possibly.
What?
So that was his theory.
But the only thing realistic about that is the ability to change colors.
Because that's what squid do.
Yeah. But is there any squid out there with inflatable appendages?
I mean, you could say, because when you take squids out of water, they fall flat, but they look like cylindrical. So you could say, oh, maybe they could kind of inflate, but I'm giving this man too much credit when he thought of that explanation.
So a lot of people think that this picture is fake. It's just a hoax. Some people have said that it's possibly a close-up photo of a painting on silk. That's the most interesting theory to me, because usually when we talk about hoax photos, it's, oh, it was doctored, or, oh, it's a model. This is just so, people claim it's just a painting. That's one of the options. It's also worth noting that some people note, it's worth noting that some people note, the object in the photo is slightly translucent. So you can kind of see through it. You can kind of see the waves go through it. Like you can see the continuation, like beside it where there's a wave, you can kind of see the lines go
right
with it. Hear me out here, guys.
I'm ready.
Shields says that this translucency could be explained by saying the image is actually showing the ghost of Nessie. Okay? Okay? This is my favorite theory, guys. Out of all the Loch Ness theories, this is honestly my favorite. I know it's wild. I know it's funny. I know it doesn't really have anything to do with this photo, but think about it. Think about it. Ghost of a plesiosaur. Ghost of an extinct animal floating in the loch. Okay? My dad.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my dad actually sent me a tweet a couple weeks ago before he even knew that we were doing a Loch Ness episode. He sent me a tweet he saw. It's from a guy named Kevin Vibert. Back in June, he tweeted, "Just heard a conspiracy that the Loch Ness Monster is actually the ghost of an ancient dinosaur. And since it affects nothing and nobody, I've decided I believe it as a treat for me." And that's what I'm going with, guys. The Loch Ness Monster is a ghost.
Yeah, I love it. It raises so many questions about religion as we know it.
Well, it's not the only time that's going to come up either. So,
Oh?
yeah,
Well,
don't worry.
What if dinosaurs get to go to heaven too?
All dinosaurs go to heaven.
And they
Well,
start
the
eating
Loch Ness
us.
Monster didn't.
Tell me you understand the reference. Tell me you understand the reference.
The Disney
classic
movie.
1990s animated, not Disney, Don Bluth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all dogs
All
go to
dogs
heaven.
go to heaven.
With the most flamboyant alligator in all cinematic history.
So going back to this photo that Shields took, turns out, even though a lot of people doubt it, our buddy Tim Dinsdale was actually in favor of it, thought it was genuine, thought it had, thought it was pretty good proof.
Sorry, before you say what you're going to say, I want to add this because Shields, he got it published in 1972. The Daily Record, the Daily Mirror, it blew up, national headlines. It's big, right? It's everything Robert Rines wanted and more.
77, not 72.
That's what I meant. Oh, goodness. Yeah, you're right. It's 1977.
Yeah.
Anyways, shortly after the photo is published and begins making its rounds, things begin to happen to people that he knows. I'm going to list off some things here. So a Dr. David Hoy, member of PSI, the butt naked people, suffers a heart attack. Major Leslie May, also part of PSI, is stricken with ill health. Members of PSI that were investigating sightings of lake monsters at Lake Cole disappear without a trace. Doc's son is injured in a motorcycle accident. One of his daughters is thrown from a horse. The other daughter gets some mysterious stomach pains, and he himself accidentally lights his beard on fire.
Whoa.
And he takes this as being like, this is the Loch Ness Monster saying, you're pushing your luck too far. So what he does is he cuts all ties to PSI. That's his response. I'm not that's it.
Well, important to note that with the character that Shields is, and Shields is still around, by the way.
Yeah.
He's become best known for his Sea Heads project, which is about rugged coasts and forms of art that interact with the landscape and evoke response. Darren Naish, who we've brought up a couple of times already, he has a Twitter thread about this photo that I read through, and he thinks that this might apply a similar explanation to the photo. So the Sea Heads project is a form of art that interacts with landscape and evokes response. And so Naish thinks that this photo is some sort of art project designed to evoke response in the media and among the public and put out there to invoke wonder, be fun, and deliberately be controversial and perhaps unnerving. So Shields is a bit of a mischief maker. So, That's Naisha's theory about the photo, is it was art meant to cause a ruckus. And if that's the case, then it has succeeded.
Yeah, what a ruckus.
I mean, yeah. I don't know. It just looks fake, bro. Like it looks fake in the sense that it looks like there is something legitimately there in front of the camera. But
It looks like Ray Harryhausen.
yeah, it just looks like a model or something. It doesn't look like a real animal. But who knows? What if it is like the most legit evidence ever and we're all just like, yeah,
just trashing on it.
I know.
yeah. So anyways, we're talking mid 70s here. Something else happened in the mid 1970s that I think is pretty interesting. So the CIA, and this is all like real, and this got actually turned into a movie called The Men Who Stare at Goats. The CIA began to fund a project, which I forget the name of. I used to know, but it basically they specialized with psychics doing remote viewing. So you kind of like Stranger Things, what they were trying to do with 11, which is to get her to go into that mental space where she can spy on, foreign embassies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like real, that like the US government tried to do that. The CIA tried to do that. But one part that is very interesting is that as a practice round, they focused their intent on Loch Ness. And this dude, Jim Mars, he's a conspiracy researcher and author. He basically figured out that when they looked at Loch Ness, what they found, these remote viewers believed that there were living creatures in Loch Ness, creatures that were physical and could be tracked, but also had the ability to dematerialize, like at will.
Whoa.
Interdimensional window fallers.
Well, their conclusion was that they were ghosts.
Let's freaking go!
So
Nessie is a ghost. Nessie is a ghost. Nessie is a ghost.
So yeah, that was that cool little thing. So, if you lived through the 70s and you put forth your hard-earned tax dollars, just know that what we learned with that money was that Nessie is a ghost, and they want to keep that information from you. So,
and they're trying to weaponize psychics.
Wow.
They were. Well, people say they still are. Officially, that's been disbanded.
I gotta be honest. Everything that we've talked about with Nessie and over these past 3 episodes, we had not a clue 3 years ago. The paranormal, supernatural, religious stuff surrounding the Loch Ness Monster boggles my mind. It's crazy.
Wild, right?
It's absolutely wild. And I love it. I love everything about it.
I have one more honorable mention before we move on to kind of the closers here. I believe I brought him up in the previous episode, a guy named Jonathan Downs.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Anyways, but he's the director of the Center for Fortean Zoology in present day. However, in 1992, when this story occurs, he was working as a psychiatric nurse and a trader of rare vinyl records. And while he was at a record collecting fair, he met a dude named Spike, who was dressed in all black and claimed to be a chaos magician. Spike, and this is what got Jonathan Downs interested in the Loch Ness Monster. Spike told him that he and a group of friends had carried out rituals to raise demonic entities. Specifically, they did one ritual at Loch Ness to raise a demonic entity named Tiamat. And as a result, yeah.
Isn't that who you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, Ted Holliday believed that there was a cult going around doing that. And here's this dude completely unrelated, telling some dude at a record vinyl collector sale, it was like, yo, I did this stuff back in the day, you know. And as a result of doing this ritual, Spike claims that he saw the head and neck of Nessie appear and disappear in the mist. And that's what got Jonathan Downes into the whole thing. Jonathan Downes will come up later very briefly.
We've talked a lot about some crazy stuff today, and I have kind of one more interesting story that relates to a lot of the supernatural stuff that we've been talking about. And then I think we might get into some more modern, scientific, a little more chill stuff with Nessie, you know, your typical sightings and things like that. But one more kind of fun story that happened in, I believe it was 2001. So everything I'm gonna try and tell this really passing, because it's not super earth shattering, but it is worth mentioning. And I'm just gonna read from the article that I found it in. It was April 24th, 2001. The ABC News article states, "The epic search for the Loch Ness Monster turned ugly today as a witch cast spells on an angry team of Swedish scientists. Armed with long nets, multi-beam sonar equipment, and acoustic cameras, scientists led by Jan Sundberg set out on a 12-day mission to capture the legendary creature and take a sample of its DNA, the creature being the Loch Ness Monster. Kevin Carolyn, a high priest in the British Coven of White Witches, turned up to cast spells on the group's boat and the loch. The Swedish researchers seemed more angered than scared of the witchcraft. I'm trying to be as scientific as possible while he casts his mumbo-jumbo spells," Sundberg said, pointing a finger. "If he shows his face down here again, we'll throw him into the lake."
Oh,
yeah.
Carolyn told ABC News that he was simply trying to protect the creature known as Nessie from harm, which is interesting for me, because we've been talking about all of these witches and people just trying to raise these monsters for God knows what reason. And this group of witches was casting spells on other people to protect the monster. Adrian Shine comes up again, saying that this is nothing new and that he's seen it all before. It's not the first time someone's tried to catch a monster, and it's certainly not the biggest net. The sonar equipment probably generated most of the media interest, but it's low resolution. So he was kind of crapping on their methods. And then just, you know, as a passing comment at the very end, Scottish National Heritage, which works to protect Scotland's national treasures, says it's important too that scientists sanitize their nets and make sure not to introduce any new species into the lake.
Zebra mussels, bro.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, this Jan, I have his full name is Jan Ove Sundberg. Yes. So he had a previous encounter with something at the loch in 1971, a full 30 years prior to this incident that Jasmine mentioned. So he was 23 years old on vacation at the loch. He's walking around the woods in the upper foyers, and he comes across in this clearing a 30-foot long cigar-shaped object that's dark gray. He says it's got this giant thing on the top that reminds him of a handle. So overall, it looks like a giant like heat iron for ironing your clothes. And he's like, I don't know what this thing is. And then he sees 3 people walk out of the woods who he assumed were like scuba divers at first, but then they just get in the ship, and the ship floats up in the air and then hovers away. And that's kind of his story.
Okay.
And like, what?
I'm just in awe. I really am.
Another marshmallow on the s'mores that is Loch Ness.
Yeah.
I could go for a s'more.
Me too.
Right?
So anyways, this guy disappears for 30 years and then comes back in 2001 and says he's going to capture Nessie in shallow water with a net, and he's going to do it in 2 weeks. the media's like, this dude's awesome. This is gonna make, because I'm sure they're kind of making fun of him. Like Jasmine said, this attracts the attention of Carolyn. Yeah, Carolyn. So yeah, the high priest of British white witches, he doesn't like the idea of Nessie getting caught. He also has a ponytail and is also a former wrestler. And
You gotta be.
Those are very important details we had to add.
Well, they are. So he shows up to the loch wearing an orange gown and a necklace with a 5-pointed star. He goes to Temple Pier and begins a ritual to protect the Loch Ness Monster. And he shows up to Sundberg's press conference and just says, "Sundberg, be gone." And that's when they almost get into a fist fight right there in front of everybody.
No.
And then, as expected, Sundberg does not capture Nessie in the 2-week period. And what Carolyn does is he gloats and says, well, you couldn't catch him anyways because I casted the protection spell. And then there's like no sightings for 2 years.
Whoa.
And so Carolyn comes back in 2003, and this is the funniest part. And he says, quote, that he might have slightly overdone it.
Oh no.
And casts another spell to reduce the protection spell. Because
oh my god,
he believed, and here we go. He believed that the Loch Ness Monster was actually a specter from a bygone area. He believed the dinosaur ghost theory. But he believed that his protection spell prevented it from manifesting. So he had to reduce it in order for it to show up again. However, that's not exactly true because like literally just a few days before he shows up to the loch in 2003, there was a sighting of the Loch Ness Monster. So
yeah, they were saying in earlier reports that Nessie seems to like know when people are going to take photos, so she's like messing around with them, going underwater at the right second, hiding behind bushes. Leave it to Nessie to be like, oh yeah, the protection spell's way too strong, I can't show myself, but oh, he's coming back, you know what, I can muster just enough prehistoric spirit power to make myself appear a day before.
So as a quick little end to this dude Carlin's story here, he comes back in 2006, January 15th, on the shores of the loch. Him and other Scottish witches dub him the official protector and high priest of Loch Ness. He's interviewed by the BBC, and he proclaims that he's going to write a letter to the British Prime Minister at the time, who was named Tony Blair, to change the name from the Loch Ness Monster to the Loch Ness Creature. And the BBC asked him, if you don't get a response, what are you going to do? And he said, well, Tony Blair won't be prime minister for very long. Keep in mind, this is 2006. He writes the letter. He gets no response. And then in 2007, Tony Blair is voted out of office. Is that a coincidence?
Oh
my gosh.
The voters did not like his no stance on the Nessie renaming project.
Yeah.
How are you feeling, listeners out there? I know we're feeling pretty good after these 3 nights in Scotland.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but I think we're gonna take it down a little bit now. I think instead of all of this paranormal, supernatural, occult stuff that we've been talking about, I think we're gonna simmer it down a little bit, and we're gonna kind of transition into some more modern day expeditions, scientific evidence, if you want to call it that. So in this transition, where we're going to be talking a little bit more about some modern day, quote, scientific expeditions, over the years, other sonar explorations were taken to locate the creature. None were ever actually successful, but there were 2 that were kind of important to note, kind of the big ones that you'll read about. There was the 1987 expedition called Operation Deep Scan. Eli, Alex, did you guys have any details about that? I just have some very basic info.
I don't have too much if you want to lead the charge, and if Eli wants to fill in anything fancy.
You've mentioned him numerous times, Adrian Shine. He's involved in Operation Deep Scan. So Adrian Shine, just real briefly, he started the Loch Ness and Morar project in the early 70s to look for the Loch Ness Monster and look for another creature called Morag, which was in Loch Morar. And he is kind of the organizing force behind Operation Deep Scan.
Cool. This operation used a fleet of about 20. I read a couple different numbers in the 20 range, but about 20 sonar equipped boats to sweep the loch with a curtain of sound. They spent a week out there using 1 million pounds worth of equipment. And for reference, 1 pound is about $1.36 US. So over $1 million used on this operation. And they were able to pick up 3 sonar contacts shown on paper as crescent-shaped marks. They indicated something big in the waters below Urquhart Castle, but this could have been a seal or a group of salmon. It has not been confirmed what it would have been.
Big slugs, maybe?
Slugs.
Yep, slugs.
Big crescent-shaped slugs just kind of squirming around.
Dinosaur ghosts.
And then
Oh, gross.
there was another sonar mission in 2003 that used 600 separate, and this is something separate from Operation Deep Scan. There might have been some of the same people, I don't know for sure, but using 600 separate sonar beams and satellite navigation technology to ensure that none of the loch was missed or skipped, the team surveyed the waters. So they hoped that the instruments aboard their search boat would pick up the air in Nessie's lungs as it reflected a distorted signal back to sonar sensors. And the team did find a buoy moored several meters below the surface as a test for the equipment. But in the end, there was no Loch Ness Monster. So they said, we went from shoreline to shoreline, top to bottom on this one. We've covered everything in this loch, and we saw no signs of any large living animal in the loch. Well, they wouldn't, because it's a ghost.
The dummies, you big morons.
Ian Florence said this. He was one of the specialists who carried out the survey for the BBC. Oh, so the BBC did this. The BBC team says that the only explanation for the persistence of the myth of the monster is that people see what they want to see. And they proved this by hiding a fence post beneath the surface of the loch, raising it in front of a coach party of tourists, and then interviewed those people afterwards. And most said that they had observed a square object, but several drew monster-shaped heads when asked to sketch what they had seen, when literally it had just been a fence post. So the people on this little expedition are very anti-Nessie existing because they swept the whole loch. But like I said, you wouldn't find anything if she's a ghost. You got to get your EMF readers out there. You got to get your digital recorders, get some EVPs, they're going about it the wrong way.
Get those photon backpacks out there.
So that was Operation Deep Scan was what, 1987?
87. And then the second expedition was 2003.
Well, let's ignore that one and go 20 years from 1987 to 2007.
Okay.
That was the segue I wanted, and that's what I'm sticking to.
Anyways,
flash forward, we get seemingly normal lab technician Gordon Holmes. You'll see why I say seemingly normal in a little bit. Because as with everything with Loch Ness, you'll see. Anyways, 2007, May 26, 10 p.m. Gordon Holmes films something in Loch Ness. He estimates it's about 14 meters in length. He's in a parking area off the A82, a couple miles from Drumnadrochit. Drumnadrochit. That one, dude. It's 2007. He thought it might be. So he sees this thing It's swimming around. 14 meters, I think, is like 20 some odd feet. He thinks it's a giant eel. He's bombarded by the media. People are wanting to promote this. CNN wants this, big people. They want this footage. They're showing this footage.
14 meters is 45 feet.
Like I said, 20 some odd feet times 2. Is it 14 meters is 45 feet?
That's what the internet says.
Oh, goodness. That's huge. Anyways, we come back to our boy, Adrian Shine. He started the lock. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Adrian Shine. Sorry.
This episode's going off the rails, guys. We're almost done.
No.
Stick with us.
No. Adrian Shine, who apparently has a reputation for being super skeptical of most footage, gives this the stamp of approval. That means it shines like Adrian.
Oh,
Like Adrian Shine. So he says that it's some of the best footage that he's ever seen, and Jasmine is gone.
I had to leave with that joke you made.
It was a solid one.
Oh, Lord. All right.
So anyways, this is when our boy Lauren Coleman shows up. Just for a little bit. Because he's like, hey, this is great and all. We have this great footage, the Gordon Holmes footage of 2007, which I'm sure I'll be showing on top of this. But Lauren Coleman wants to know who this guy is. So he pulls up, he does some research. Well, Holmes wasn't just a lab technician. Holmes had written 3 books, the titles of which are The Complex Creation of All Universes, 2000 BC, A Neolithic Solstice Odyssey, and Merlin's Meteorite, all of which are nonfiction, by the way.
whoa.
He also claims that he has a rare medical condition that allows him to visualize portions of dreams while he is conscious, and this usually lasts for a minute or 2 and happens every 2 to 3 months, and that's what he believes he was seeing in the loch, even though he filmed it.
I was like, wait, so he daydreams?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. First
Dude,
of all,
apparently this is like really vivid and real, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
But he's seemingly normal. And then he comes out here with the creation of all universes,
Yeah, what was it? 2001, a Neolithic summer solstice adventure.
2000 BC, a Neolithic Solstice Odyssey.
Amazing. It's so good.
dude. Yeah, so just it goes to show you gotta be really in the weird for Loch Ness, I guess.
I mean, you got to be in like a different kind of crazy, and then you just kind of coincide with Loch Ness crazy because he was already on his own path of like stumbling down the creation of all universes.
I don't know.
well, one of the things about his video is he panned back to get the background shore into the shot, which is part of the reason why a lot of people like the video, because it is able to show scale and reference, less likely to be fake, providing geographical location and, like I said, scale to calculate how big the creature might have been and how fast it was traveling. I didn't read any of that about his books or his daydreams. This was just this to me sounded just like a typical Nessie video taken, but
well, it's not.
how could I be so naive? How could I be so naive? But I think we want to cap this episode off by talking about some things that might have happened in 2021. Is that right?
Yes. Quick mention of, and this will lead us into the 2021 stuff. There's a really good website out there called the Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register. That was started by Gary Campbell. I mentioned that earlier. I don't think he is related to Alex Campbell, but it's lochnessightings.com.
Yeah.
And so he tallies up photos and sightings from basically everything from St. Columba onward.
Important to note, he does categorize the sightings in two different ways. So the sightings themselves, there's a list for like in person, I'm at the loch, I am seeing this with my eyes. There's also a list for people who have spotted something, the creature, on the webcam live stream that is constantly running, because there are people who monitor that. And whenever something pops up on this webcam stream, they make note of that. But he has separated that list as a way to kind of, it's just a separation, but also it's to show like the global reach that Nessie has. Like there's people from across the world literally sitting down watching a live stream of a loch to see if anything pops up, and stuff does.
Whoa. That sounds like it sucks.
Yeah, right.
I
mean,
know.
that's what the OG Loch Ness Investigation Bureau people did. They set up camp. I mean, they were in person though, but they set up camp to just watch the loch on their own
Dang.
accord.
That's rough, dude. I couldn't look for lake monsters. You know, when you go looking for Bigfoot, there's like other stuff to look at. You know what I mean? There's like you can
Other
look at
nature to enjoy.
you know, and then like, you know, you do a knock, you don't hear anything back, and you're like, oh, I guess they're not in this area. Then you walk away. You know, over there, you just gotta look at the lake till it shows up.
I guess I'll move from this shore to that shore over there, and maybe the shore there after that.
But anyways, August 26th of this year, a man named Benjamin Scanlon captured a sonar image while on a cruise ship called the Nessie Hunter. It was down about 65 feet below the surface, and he estimated it was about 10 to 13 feet in length. Baby Nessie? Not Nessie?
Oh.
I don't know. Follow that up. July 30, 2021. Mr. Veacock at 3:10 p.m. was near Urquhart Castle, looking out over the loch using his binocs. It's binoculars. Anyways, he sees something that's 2 feet high, kind of emerge from the water. It's 10 to 12 feet long. It's kind of like this, like it's a weird shape. It's like a hump, but it's got a sharp edge to it, like a 45-degree angle on it. I don't know. It's weird. And that leads us to the biggest thing of this year, the drone footage. That's right.
Footage.
You guys guessed it.
The drone footage. Yeah. Whoa.
So, Richard Maver, August 2021. He's a British outdoorsman paddling through Scotland's Loch Ness for a long-distance charity canoe trip. All right. He takes video with a drone because he's making videos for this. He's documenting it. His video shows a long, thin form just beneath the water's surface, and it was so fleeting that he didn't even notice it when he first posted it. So because he posted these videos on YouTube, I believe. His YouTube channel called Richard Outdoors. This, by the way, this charity canoe trip was for the Alzheimer's Society charity. They raised about $20,000 in US money, 15,000 pounds. He created 2 lengthy videos to chronicle the 4-day, 62-mile paddling expedition. So he posted these videos, didn't notice anything, wasn't really looking for anything, just making this project to get this footage out here.
Did you get what day he posted the videos? He posted it on September 1st, which is my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy
September
birthday,
1st.
Eli.
Well, it's not my birthday right now. It's
Happy
when
birthday on September 1st. What ended up happening is a week after he posted the videos, there was a commenter named Steve Bates who called attention to 4 minutes in at the water's edge. And he said, the ripples look like Nessie. And Bates originally wrote, oh, it must be a trick of the light or the waves. Maver responded saying, must be a trick of the light or the waves. But then he looked more closely and he began to have second thoughts, remembering that he hadn't seen any driftwood or debris or other objects in the water at that time. And he said, that's what confused me. It's an inland water, so you don't get tidal debris like you do on the coast. Things do wash up, but nothing of this size. So basically, this footage was taken on day 3 when the group pulled their canoes up in a remote spot on the south shore of Loch Ness for the night, and he used his drone to capture a shot of the group. And as the camera zooms in to the shore, you can see the outline of a creature nearly twice the length of the beached 14-foot-long watercrafts, and it appears to approach the group while floating beneath the rippling waves. And I will say, I watched the video before I read any of this, and I did see what we're supposed to be looking at, because a lot of the time I look at evidence, air quotes, I look at evidence and I'm like, I can't even tell what we're supposed to be looking at. Like, where is this thing that you're saying is so obviously there? But in this video, I was able to see without any context, oh, that's a little bit weird. Did you guys watch the video?
I did. It looks like a plesiosaur.
Kind of. I will say it's interesting, because when I first watched it, I was like, it's just the waves, man. Like, it's just waves. But the thing about it is you can see the waves move over top of it. Like, the object itself does look like waves, but those waves stay in the same spot while other waves pass over them, which is interesting, I will say. I don't know if it really looks like a plesiosaur, in my opinion.
It's got the long neck and the tail and the bulby body.
I mean, yeah.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
It doesn't. There's no clear outline. I don't see a clear outline. I see a shape. I see a form, but I don't see. Here's the neck, and here's the body, and here's the flippers, and here's the tail. I see a blob.
What?
Oh, Jasmine, what are you talking about, blob?
Dude, there's like a neck there and a tail.
Okay. That looks different. That looks enhanced. I don't remember seeing it that clear. The article that I read, the original article, let me open the link, because I do see it in that video. I will say that it's got a clearer outline.
Well, I'm assuming if it's a drone, like, drones record pretty flat images, at least speaking from my drone. And once you boost the contrast, things look a lot nicer. And I've noticed, because I flew my drone over Lake Champlain and filmed some of the underwater, like, mountain ranges, which you can see even in person, but I wasn't able to really see them in my footage until I boosted the contrast and kind of played with it a little bit. So there might be some enhancements, but I wouldn't say it's like outright manipulation. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it lets you see it a little bit clearer.
Gotcha.
That was a pretty wild video, though.
Yeah. That happened this year, everyone.
Nice.
So what is it? Dino Ghost?
Yeah.
Dino ghosts.
Nature is healing. Dinosaur ghosts are returning.
And with that drone footage, I think we're coming to a close on this final episode of Nessie. We have one more super important thing that Alex is going to do for us, but I think that's it, guys, right? Is that it? Did we skip anything we wanted to talk about?
No, we skipped a lot, but nothing we want to talk
we did
about.
skip a lot. Like we said, there's a lot, but these were the things that we wanted the chance to talk about. Our final thing that we're going to do right now is truly going to redeem that first episode that we ever released 3 years ago, where we put 3 of the world's most famous lake monsters in one space. Alex, please take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. Now the fun begins. For those who are new, Cryptid Coliseum was introduced in episode 67, The Loveland Frogman. Coliseum is a bit of a mystery. Theories range from what it is and its overall purpose, what unseen forces are in control, Or could the arena itself be in control, a sentient battleground on the prowl for combatants? Well, we present to you a good-natured fight to the death between three aquatic legends that we like to call Triple Threat Trilogy Final, Red Blood on the Scottish Loch.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Camera pans over scenic Loch Ness. The waves wash ashore in slow, rhythmic motions. The sun sits high above. A distorted trumpet bellows in the distance. Suddenly, the ground is rocked by tremors and shakes. The waters violently chop as the shore begins to break apart. Emerging from the foaming violence of the loch, 6 massive bleached pillars begin to pierce the sky. Etched in the stone columns are countless symbols, ancient arcane images, and names known throughout history: Genghis Khan, Gilgamesh, Julius Caesar, Stephen Myers, to name a few. The Loch Ness becomes the next stage in a long tradition of brutality. From over the green hills and glens of the Scottish Green, we see thousands upon thousands of people sprinting and running towards the lake. What are these people running from? They're not. They're running to the world's premiere, death-dealing, limb-ripping, brain-bashing carnival carnage that is Cryptid Coliseum.
Sick.
As the maddened crowd surrounds the loch, a low rumbling becomes louder and louder. Overhead are 2 huge military choppers. They're jet black and have no discernible markings. Each carries its own deadly cargo. Hailing from Lake Champlain, bordering the shores of New York, Vermont, and Quebec, Canada, it's the mythical Champ, the giant lake monster that evaded both Captain Crumb and P.T. Barnum. This giant monster thrashes and screams in its harness, its huge eyes bulging as it bellows a deafening cry. To quote one Jasmine May with, "This champ boy is hefty."
Wait, what?
I say that?
In the callback to the Champ episode, Jasmine says that.
Oh my God.
And being flown in from the Okanagan Lake of British Columbia, the powerful and terrifying Ogopogo is here to rip and tear its opponents like they were a pack of wild horses. Sharp teeth gnash and bite in the air like a sane piranha as the giant 2 creatures are held above the loch. These 2 gigantic serpentine creatures continue to thrash and wail high in the sky, the choppers struggling to keep aloft as below the waters begin to stir. An intense bubbling and boiling of water reaches a frantic pace as a long-necked creature rises up. Turning its shimmering head from the noise of the shores to the loud whining of the helicopters above, Nessie has arrived to fight in the Coliseum.
Oh, sick.
Suddenly, the engines give way on the copper on the left as it begins to turn around, crashing into the one next to it, a giant fireball exploding, sending debris and carnage everywhere as the 2 giant creatures, Ogopogo and Champ, fall into the sky and into the giant water below and begin the battle of the 3 lake monsters. They all turn around, circle, and face each other. And right as they begin to attack, we hear a screams of crowds running from the south end of the loch as the Beluskin house is blown up in a giant green fireball.
Oh my God.
Fire vomits from the mouth of a giant undead plesiosaur, Lord of Hell, summoned by Aleister Crowley. It reams and scores, grabbing audience members and shoving it in its mouth, melting them izzards inside and out.
Nice.
At the sight as the creature as it begins to crawl into the water, bubbling and boiling, Ogopogo, Loch Ness, and Champ turn and face. And now begins the 3-on-1 match to end it all.
Oh, sick.
And the camera goes black, and we ask you, who wins? Who loses? This is Cryptid Coliseum.
Sick.
Oh my God. I am so happy with where you took that because I was really nervous about who was going to win in Loch Ness when it's Nessie's home territory. Oh my gosh. Wow. Alex, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That was great.
Thank you.
And if you want to hear more narratives like that, and you are a newer listener to Cryptid Campfire, go back a couple tomes. We've got a whole season that we did where we talked about newer cryptids that we hadn't explored yet and put them in this Coliseum with other cryptids that we had talked about, and we wrote battles like this for them to have. It's really entertaining. It was a really fun tome.
Oh yeah.
And maybe we'll bring the Coliseum back in the near future.
The Coliseum never dies. Well, guys, are we done?
We're done.
I'm ready to be done with Nessie. I love her. Honestly, out of a lot of the things that we've researched and talked about, after everything I've learned about Loch Ness, we talk about field trips all the time. We have yet to go on one. I need to get my passport before we go on any major ones, but I kind of want to go to Loch Ness, guys.
Dude, that would be fun. It really would.
Yeah. Cryptid Campfire really goes international.
Dude, we should do it.
Yeah, and then we could record an episode from the pub.
The pub, just the pub.
The pub, dude.
The pub.
You know the one where everyone used to hang out at,
Mm-hmm.
Everyone go out on the loch, see the monster and be like, you know what? Let's just go to the pub.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to make that. That's going to be the new TV show, like a sitcom called The Pub about Nessie researchers, but all they do is hang out at the pub.
I'm in.
And the reason
wizards.
and the reason they don't go outside is there's a bunch of naked witches dancing on the shoreline.
Exactly. See, that's your episode 1 right there. What do you do about the naked people on the loch? Anyways, thanks everyone for listening.
Oh, yes.
Hit the subscribe. Be sure to like, comment. Let us know how we did in the comments below.
If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform right now, and you're wondering, wow, I want to see the pictures they were talking about. I want to see these video clips. You can head over to the Paranormal Network's YouTube channel. We have video versions of all of our podcasts posted there. You can go watch those. Skim through if you want to see those pictures we were talking about, or just watch the whole thing again.
Yeah. Every great podcast deserves a second listen, and that's us. We're great. Cryptid Campfire. Where can you find out more about us? Eli will tell you more.
Yeah. Cryptidcampfire.com being the number 1. Got our episodes up there, as well as snazzy t-shirts. Check out our social medias. That's at Cryptid Campfire, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're fairly active on all of those. Hit the DMs. Anyways, moving on. Be sure to, if you've done those things, if you followed us, if you bought the shirts, you still need more. Check out our Patreon page. $5 a month gets you access to two exclusive episodes per month, as well as a wallpaper designed by our very own Alexander Daikaiju.
That's me. Thinking of making a really cool Nessie one this month to fit with the theme. And I hope you come along and check it out.
Indeed. And if you want to see more of Alex's wonderful artwork, how can I do so, sir?
Well, you can check me out on Instagram at Alex Daikaiju. That's Alex Daikaiju. Post a lot of monster, crypto-related artwork. I also make my own comics for fun and profit. Be sure to check it out. And this 3-parter was crazy, man. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling it in my back and lumbar support today.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
So I would like
You
to
should do squats.
Oh,
Strong
never.
glutes, dude. It helps with the lower back. Anyways, go ahead.
Anywho, besides my terrible workout routine, my sources today were Cryptid Wikis with a Z.com, the Dreadnought Wikipedia, StrangeHistory.com, Freudianforums.com, Busted Halo, the Man Who Filmed Nessie.com. I wrote that really small. And that was about it for this episode. And now the part we've been waiting for, Jasmine May with, and this buffet of just sources upon sources that we're ready to just basically glutton on. So take it away.
Well, for starters, if you'd like to follow me on social media, you can do so at Jasmine May with JASMINEMAEWITH. That's both Instagram and Twitter. And yes, now for my grand bibliography of all the sources that I've used in all 3 parts of this Nessie episode series. They are as follows: Encyclopedia Britannica, PBS.org, BBC News, Inverness Courier, the History Channel, Don'tTakePictures.com, Wikipedia, National Catholic Register, Fordham University Sourcebooks, ScottishMuseums.org.uk, Dictionary.com, the New York Times, Encyclopedia.com, LochNessProject.org, The National, which is an online Scotland newspaper, The Man Who Filmed Nessie.com, Nessie.co.uk, Mysterious Universe, LochNessInvestigation.com, Spooky Isles, Darren Nash's Twitter account, ABC News, NBC News, Sydney Morning Herald, New York Post, LochNessSightings.com, LochNess.co.uk, which sounds very similar to something I already read, but I think is different, The Irish Post, New York Times, and TetZoo.com.
Whoa. I counted about 30. How about you guys out there?
I wasn't counting.
Well, that was the best laundry list we've had so far. Amazing. The best. And now the man who cobbles everything together, keeps this train a moving, and has pretty good looking hair, I might say. Eli Watson.
Hello. Thank you for the compliment on the hair. Hello, everyone. You can follow me at the Eli Watson on Instagram. Thanks.
Yeah, he posts really good photos on it. Good photography, drone shots too. Check them out.
Thank you. Sources for today come from the Wikipedia Cryptids Wiki. I wrote that down, but I didn't use it. The ncregister.com, Nick Redfern's Nessie, exploring the supernatural origins of the Loch Ness Monster. Loch Ness Monster by Bradley Steffens, lochness.com. Cambridge, the website. LochNessInvestigation.com, the nypost.com, and the Singular Fortean Society.
Nice.
And that, friends, brings us to a close.
We're done, baby. We're closing out our concert in Scotland. We're moving on. We are heading to a different continent. We're out of here, y'all. It's been so fun. I've really enjoyed these 3 Nessie episodes, guys.
Yeah. Holy shnikes. I never knew there were so many wizards with Nessie.
I know. Just think of how just think back 3 years ago when we did our first episode and we had no clue what we were talking about.
We're here to tell you about Plesiosaurus. Thank you very much. Good night.
Yeah.
Dude, seriously, this is a testament to how far we've come. Just listen to the first one and listen to this one.
Yeah. And it's honestly, we know that this is a really long episode. This is definitely on the longer side. If you've listened to this whole thing, thank you. That means so much to us. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you'll continue to listen. We hope that not all episodes will be this long, but we didn't want to have to make it a 4-parter. So we squeezed in everything we could in this last episode of our 3-part mini series on the Loch Ness Monster on this Cryptid Campfire World Tour.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.